What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to continue our look at all the new cards from Worlds Collide. That is the new Keyforge set. It is actually coming out on Friday. So in the run up to that, before we get to Friday, I'm going to show you every single new card that there is. We looked at this yesterday, so let's move on to logos today, and let's start off with Babbling Bibliophile, a 1 power, 0 armor creature, no elusive, no skirmish, literally could not be weaker, but when you reap you draw 2 cards. That's brilliant. That's really, really good. Doc Buckton, when you reap you draw 1 card. This is literally twice as good as that. Now it is a 1 power, 0 armor creature, no elusive, etc. It's very fragile. But if you can keep it on the field for a couple turns, it's pretty good at drawing cards. I mean, it ain't no Professor Sudakin, but it's still pretty good. We're also getting Daughter, which of course is very interesting, given that in Call of the Archons we got Mother, and there are a lot of similarities between the two. Now the bad news is this is a 2 power, 0 armor creature. The good news is you do gain elusive. And it does exactly what Mother did. During your draw card step, refill your hand to 1 additional card. You lose 3 power, you gain elusive, you do the same thing. Drawing extra cards is good. Being able to draw extra cards at the end of your turn so you start the following turn with extra cards is inarguably a good thing and gives you a rather large advantage. Cool. We're also getting EDAL Eddie 4x4. Might be one of my favourite cards in the entirety of Worlds Collide. You can have that list on Friday. 3 power, 0 armor creature. And when you play it, you archive a card. Now archiving's all well and good. You whack a card in your archives, and then later on during the game, you can choose to either pick up your entire archive or none of it. It's very much an all or nothing thing. So what you do is you stash a couple of cards for later, and then when it's the perfect time, boom, you've got the perfect card. Except Eddie does more than this. Eddie also reads your opponent's keys cost +1 amber for each card in your archives. And archiving is one of the things that Logos does so gosh darned well. You build up an archive of 6, 7, 8 cards, your opponent's keys cost 6, 7, 8 amber more next turn. And every turn until they can get rid of your archives. It's kind of nuts if I'm honest with you. As a side note, happy to confirm that Dysania will be printed in Worlds Collide. That is the absolute phenomenal counter to this, because Dysania says that your opponent has to discard all the cards in their archive, and you get 1 amber for each card that they discarded. So be really careful doing this against a deck with Dysania in. HAPSIS is a 5 power, 0 armor creature, and after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting HAPSIS, you ward it and draw a card. Now, warding is one of the new mechanics in Worlds Collide, whereby you put a ward counter on a creature, and then the next time they would be damaged or removed from play, they aren't. You just remove the ward counter and carry on. Given that you get a ward counter every time an enemy creature is destroyed fighting it, and then that makes you essentially immune for another turn, that's pretty gosh darned awesome. Although, of course, if your opponent plays multiple ways to get rid of it, one of them will go through. Speaking of warding, we're getting a new artifact, HOLOGRAMMOPHONE, which gives you an amber bonus and has an action that lets you ward a creature. We've just said how good warding is. That's a good thing. Information Exchange is an action card, and when you play it, you steal an amber. If your opponent stole amber from you on their previous turn, you steal 2 amber instead. Logos is not a house which is famous for stealing. And it's really not a house which has been famous for amber control in the past. Yes, it had Effervescent Principle, and we all love Effervescent Principle, but outside of that, it's not been great at amber control. Well, frankly, this might only steal you 2, but to put it another way, it steals 2. Quant is a 3 power, 0 armor creature, and when you reap, you may play 1 non-logos card this turn. Just so long as it's an action. And we've seen stuff like this with logos in the past. In Call of the Archons, we had Phase Shift. In Age of Ascension, we had HelperBot. This is an every turn thing, not just when you play it like the others. Well, every turn if you choose to reap, which you should, but it is only for actions, not artifacts, not creatures, not upgrades. It's still house cheating though, and house cheating is good. Sanitation Engineer is a 4-power, 0-armor creature. And it's got Hazardous 1, which is to say that if your opponent tries attacking it, they take 1 damage before the attack even happens. However, if you want to reap with it, you have to discard a card from your hand. Except that might actually be a good thing. Think of it like Yerk. Discarding 1 card from your hand is often really good, because what you do is discard a card not of your active house that you don't want to play this turn or next turn, or can't play this turn, and then you've got 1 extra card to draw at the end of your turn. Remember, at the end of your turn, you're drawing until you've got 6 cards in hand, so getting 1 card out of your hand means you draw 1 more at the end of your turn. Get rid of a card you don't want, so that you maybe draw into a card that you do. Total Vapors is an action card. When you play it, you draw 2 cards and archive 1. Well, we've talked about archiving and how good that can be if you can stash a particularly good card in your archives. And then drawing 2 cards is good. We like drawing 2 cards. Time Traveler draws 2 cards. Now, Time Traveler also gives you an amber bonus, but still, we like it. Thorium Plasmate gives you an amber bonus, is an action, and when you play it, you move an enemy creature anywhere in its controller's battle line. And you deal 2 damage to the creature that you moved for each of its neighbours that shares a house with it. So if you can grab a 4-power creature and move it next to 2 creatures of the same house, gets destroyed. If you find a 2-power creature and move it next to 1 creature of the same house, it gets destroyed. It's quite nice. If nothing else, it gives you an amber bonus, lets you do some damage. That's kind of cool. Titan Guardian. We needed a Titan, right? We've already had Titan Librarian. That came along in Age of Ascension. We've already had Titan Mechanic. That came along in Call of the Archons. Well, in Worlds Collide, we get Titan Guardian, a 5-power, 1-armor creature. That's quite beefy. It has Taunt, which means you cannot attack the neighbours of Titan Guardian. You have to go after Titan Guardian itself. And when it is destroyed, if it's not on a flank, you draw 2 cards. But remember, the way to get it on a flank is to destroy the creatures next to it. Then it's on a flank, then you destroy it, then they don't draw the cards, them being your opponent. Well, good news! It's got Taunt. You cannot attack its neighbours, you have to attack it. You could actually use something like Thorium Plasmate to move it to a flank and then destroy it, but even then it's still a 5-power, 1-armor creature. It's got a lot of bulk, it should do some good stuff while it's out, then you get 2 cards when it's destroyed. Wormhole Technician, a 3-power, 0-armor creature, and when you reap, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Logos card, you play it, otherwise you archive it. Now, on the one hand, I adore the fact that you get to play an extra card here. Think of it kind of like a nerfed Wild Wormhole. You reap to gain an amber, and then if the top card is Logos, you may play it. Wild Wormhole, you play the top card regardless. Having said that, sometimes you've got a discard that you really don't want to play. I don't know, Unlocked Gateway. So when you play Wild Wormhole, you might hit Unlocked Gateway, and that's a very bad thing. Wipes the board, and then it's an Omega card, so your turn ends. Here, if you've got non-Logos cards you don't want to play, you know you won't be playing them. Oh yeah, and you get to archive. Though it is blind archiving, so do be very careful. You might end up building an archive of 2 or 3 houses, which means when you pick up your archive, you're going to have a lot of unplayable cards in your hand, and you won't be drawing at the end of your turn, because you'll already have a hand greater than 6. Candle Unit is another card that I absolutely adore. It is a 5-power, 1-armor creature, which is weirdly bulky for a candle. And after an enemy creature reaps, you draw a card, which is wonderful. Every single time they reap, you get to draw a card. Every single time. Your opponent reaps 6 times, you draw 6 cards. But remember, you're drawing during your opponent's turn. You've already drawn up to 6 cards or maybe more at the end of your turn. These are just extra cards, so you get a monster turn. And it's got an action which captures an amber. And we've talked about the importance of amber control and stopping your opponent forging keys. It's rather wonderful. Code Monkey, lovely little in-joke there for the programming community. 3 power, 0 armor creature with deploy. Don't have much deploy in Worlds Collide, but we have one here. It lets you put it down anywhere in your battle line, doesn't have to go down on a flank. And when you play it, you archive each neighbouring creature, and if they share a house, you gain 2 amber. So the ideal situation here is you play it next to 2 neighbouring creatures, hopefully with nice play abilities. Then they're ready to replay on a later turn, reusing their play abilities, and you gain 2 amber in the process. That sounds good by me. Data Forge is a wonderful card. When you play it, you may forge a key at plus 10 current cost. I should mention you get an amber bonus here. And it is reduced by 1 for each card in hand. Now, on the one hand, we could look at this and go, hang on a second, this is an objectively worse version of Key Abduction, because Key Abduction returns all Mars creatures to your hand, and then you forge at plus 9. Or we could go, well, hang on a second, it's logos. They're great at archiving, which means when you pick up your archive, you have a much larger hand. And they're great at drawing cards, which gives you a larger hand. So actually, this is the perfect key cheating card for logos. There are going to be some decks with Data Forge and a bunch of archiving and draw, which are just flat out borderline broken. And yes, obviously, you will be archiving Data Forge if at all possible, so that you can have it at the perfect time. I genuinely love Data Forge. Discombobulator is an upgrade that gives you an amber bonus and reads, this creature gains, your amber cannot be stolen. Yeah. Now, we had a little look at information exchange a couple minutes ago, and I told you that that was quite nice in making your opponent maybe not want to steal. Discombobulator, on the other hand, just flat out stops your amber being stolen. Put it on something like a Gargantodon, a 16 power creature which is coming out in the set, and there is a decent chance that your amber can't be stolen for quite a while. Yeah, that's pretty good. Dr. Millie. Side note, adore the artwork on this card. 2 power, 0 armor creature. When you play it, for each creature your opponent controls in excess of you, not counting Dr. Millie, archive a card. So if your opponent's got 5 creatures and you've got 2 plus Dr. Millie, you get to archive 3 cards. Now, this could end up with you archiving your entire hand, but remember, just wait until you've only got 1 or 2 cards left in hand if you only want to archive 1 or 2 cards. Love it, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely love it. Seriously, very, very good if you want to go aggressively archiving. Groupthink Tank, a 4 power free armor card, and free armor is very good, and you don't see that very often. And it's got an action whereby you deal 4 damage to each creature that shares a house with at least one of its neighbours. So any shadow creature next to another shadow creature, they both get dealt 4 damage. Any Logos creature next to another Logos creature, they both get dealt 4 damage. Now this is each creature, not each enemy creature, so it will hit you as well, but you know this is going to be in your deck, or at least you really should, so just make sure that you don't put houses next to each other unless they can take a hit, or you want them destroyed. But maybe you don't want a big Groupthink Tank, maybe you want a mini Groupthink Tank. 3 power, 2 armor, and when you play, or fight, or reap, you deal 8 damage to a creature that shares a house with 2 of its neighbours. So here you deal double the damage, but only to creatures that share the same house with both of their neighbours. So this one is going to be far easier for you to avoid, but it is also going to be far easier for your opponent to avoid. In a sealed tournament, where your opponent is not going to know you're playing this, at least initially, because in sealed your opponent doesn't get to look at your Archon card, it's way better. In an Archon tournament, your opponent can look at your Archon card at the beginning of the game, they'll know this is an option. But oh, when it works, it's great. Reassembling Automaton, 3 power, 0 armor, but when it is destroyed, if you have any other creatures in play, fully heal it, exhaust it, and move it to a flank. So it doesn't get any more powerful. That's a nice little tease for in a moment. It always stays at a 3 power creature. But if you've got any other creatures in play, you just heal it and move it to a flank. That is awesome. Academy Training is a lovely upgrade, which gives a creature, Reap, draw a card. Well, you could put it on something like Babbling Bibliophile, so when you Reap, you draw 3 cards. That is terrifying, frankly, because it's a 1 power 0 armor creature with no elusive. Or you could just put it on some big creature that's unlikely to be destroyed quickly, and then they get to draw a card when you Reap. It's extra draw, and extra draw is good. Hyde is a lovely creature with 4 power, 0 armor, and when you Reap, you draw a card. If you control Velum, you draw 2 cards instead. And when it is destroyed, you archive Velum from your discard pile, and if you do, you archive Hyde. And we need to go slightly out of order here and have a look at Velum, because Velum is a 2 power 0 armor creature, very weak. And when you Reap, you archive a card, but if you control Hyde, you archive 2 cards instead. So if you've got both on the field at once, you Reap with each of them, gain 2 amber, 2 cards, and archive 2 cards. That's very cool. And when it's destroyed, you archive Hyde from your discard pile, and if you do, you archive Velum. I.e., if one of them's already in your discard pile, you get to archive both of them. And then on your next logo's turn, you can play them down as a pair. They work very well as a pair, and Velum is a special rare. Fun little side note, the only special rare in logos, so they will come along as a pair. Mimic Gel is a 0 power 0 armor creature. Hang on a second. There's a weird mechanic going on here, as you might be able to tell from the artwork. Mimic Gel cannot be played unless there is another creature in play. That is either yours or your opponent's. Doesn't say friendly creature. Mimic Gel enters play as a copy of another creature in play, except it belongs to house logos. Copy your best creature, or your opponent's best creature. Copy a Hunting Witch, and then gain an amber every time you play a logos creature. Or indeed any creature, but initially logos. So many cool applications of Mimic Gel. Prescriptive GRAMMARBOT is a 3 power 0 armor creature with taunt, so you can't attack its neighbours, you have to attack it. And hazardous free, so if you want to attack it, you've got to take 3 damage to yourself before the fight even happens. And when you Reap, you enrage a creature. That is to say that you give it a rage counter, and then that creature, the next time it is used, cannot Reap and cannot use an action. It has to fight, and then the rage counter is taken off and they can do as they like in the future. Yeah, there's a lot going on with GRAMMARBOT here. Self-Bolstering Automata. I did tease this just a couple minutes ago. It is a 1 power 0 armor creature, and when it is destroyed, if you have any other creatures in play, again as before, if it's the only creature in play of yours, it does get destroyed, and it is you have, not you or your opponent. Then instead of destroying it, you fully heal it, exhaust it, move it to a flank, and give it 2+1 power counters. Now, worth pointing out, it is exhausted. Well, if it's destroyed on your opponent's turn, it's exhausted during your opponent's turn, which is to say that you then have to wait until the end of your next turn for it to actually be unexhausted and usable. But doesn't really matter, right? It still gets the +2 power counters. I'm totally okay with this. And this works if you throw it at one of your opponent's creatures so that it gets destroyed. And that's actually better because then it gets exhausted on your turn and then unexhausted at the end of your turn. And as long as you can keep other creatures on the field, this could turn into like a 20, 30 power monster. It would always be odd power, but you get the idea. Universal Keylock is an artifact that gives you an amber bonus. It says that keys cost +3 amber, and that is a permanent skill that is working from the second it's played. After a player forges a key, destroy Universal Keylock. So the idea here is you play it down, you gain an amber, your opponent either cannot forge a key on their next turn, or has to pay 3 more to forge, then it gets destroyed and you get no downside, you've just gained an amber. You got to be very careful when you play it. It really is for when you're in a position to forge, but your opponent isn't. But if this works, Oh lordy, this is fun. While we're talking about things that are universal, universal recycle bin. Another artifact, another amber bonus, and it's got an action that archives a purged card that you own. Now, generally speaking, when a card gets purged, it is removed from the game. But like every game, every TCG has a mechanic that removes cards from the game, and sooner or later they bring in a mechanic to get them back. Well, this doesn't just get it back, it archives it so you can use it whenever you like, essentially. It's there ready and waiting to go, which is nice. But it also means that if you're playing cards that purge, have a look at my every card from this video I did yesterday, I'll pop a link in the description. Sometimes you are going to be purging a lot in those kind of decks, and Universal Recycle Bin can be phenomenal. And finally, Zenzizenzizenzic. We are finishing on the leader. Every Keyforge house has a leader in Worlds Collide. I did a video about that. I'll try and remember to link it in the description. It is a 4-power, 2-armor creature, and during your draw card step, you refill your hand to 2 additional cards. That sounds wonderful. There must be a downside. There is. It only works if it's in the center of your battle line. And unlike the other leaders from Worlds Collide, it needs to be in the center of your battle line at the end of your turn. That's important. The other ones, you can just wait till it's in the middle, use their skills, and then just play other cards so it's not in the middle. Something like Zenzizenzizenzic, it might be in the middle of your battle line, and then you've got one more logos creature that you really want to play this turn, except you can't, because if you play it, then Zenzizenzizenzic will no longer be in the center of your battle line, and if it's not in the center of your battle line, you don't get to draw the extra 2 cards. You have been warned, ladies and gentlemen. You have been warned. So there we go. Those are all of the logos cards, all the new ones at least, from Worlds Collide. I love logos. Logos is getting dangerously close to being my actual hands-down favourite house, and the cards from Worlds Collide are doing nothing to dampen my enthusiasm. But I'd like to know what you think about all of these, and I'd like to know which ones are your favourites, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk Keyforge, Transformers, Final Fantasy, Pokemon, whatever games take my fancy, really. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all that good stuff. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.